Mindful of Madness podcast. If you're new, I'm your host, Andrew Ingram. I'm a writer and a comedian. I'm just trying to scratch out a niche for myself somewhere in the middle of the country. Okay, I'm in Colorado. My location is not secret. Anyway, every week on the show, I interview a creative person about their art and process. And this week, I'm really excited to share my conversation with CJ Hackett. CJ is a fantastic musician and has a number of projects. You can find his band, A Bad Night for a Hero, on pretty much every streaming service there is. He's got a great solo project called The Yeti. And most recently, he's been making lo-fi electronic music under the name Prefab Soul. You can find that on his YouTube channel, The Yeti You Know. As for me, you can find my writing at mindfulofmadness.com. I've been busting my ass since coronavirus hamstrung most of my other creative outlets, so it'd be really cool if you check that stuff out. And as always, you can, of course, follow me on Twitter at DrewJokerIngram and on Instagram at AndrewIngram88. And please remember to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. It makes me feel warm and fuzzy and hopefully helps new listeners find their way here. All right, enough of this nonsense. Let's get into Mindful of Madness Episode 8 with CJ Hackett. Welcome to the Mindful of Madness podcast. It's me, Andrew. You heard me in the intro. And with me this week is a buddy of mine, somebody I don't get to hang out with a lot, but who I really like hanging out with every time I see him. So I'm excited to talk to him for an extended period of time. Give it up for CJ Hackett, everybody.
Hello. It's good to be here.
Yeah.
It is good to actually hang out and sit down for once.
Yeah, because we always see each other at shows, and they're loud, and, unless you're outside, ignoring the show, being a bad friend, you don't get to talk that much, so. Let's see, do we want to do the rundown of the artistic things you do?
Oh, boy. Okay. You want me to just list things?
Yeah, well, I would say first and foremost a musician?
Yeah, musician, sometimes writer, show host, organizer,
artist,
content creator, just, I try to do everything.
Yeah, you've been, lately you've been dropping, chill wave tracks, twice a week?
Yeah, just been, I've always... sorry, I'm getting tongue-tied.
It's okay.
I'm just trying to create, when everything seems really crazy. I'm still trying to improve as an artist, and so, yeah, I'm just putting out these chillwave tracks because they're easy, kind of quick, and it's just simple, and just...
Yeah, and there's something that, purely from a business revenue stream kind of thing, there's something that everybody listens to constantly.
Yeah.
It's, people don't talk about, electronic music as a real art form as often as other types of music, but they've kind of become low-key the most popular kind of music in the country, maybe in the world.
Yeah, it's kind of funny.
I don't know if anybody's making money off of it.
Some people are.
Some people are?
Yeah, there's some pretty big names out there where they get millions of views, millions of clicks on Spotify, you know, and streams, and it's kind of wild. It's like sometimes celebrities are getting involved with these artists now.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. Like Ryan Celsius, he does kind of a lot of trap videos, but he doesn't just do produce music. He makes these incredible visuals to go along with them, and he was commissioned by Will Smith to do some work, and it's just okay, people are catching on.
That's pretty cool. I mean, and Will Smith, as as big as he is as a movie star and as big as he was as a musician, not a guy that was ever thought to be on the cutting edge of what was happening. I mean, sure, he was getting Grammys, but like Wu-Tang Clan was around. It wasn't like he was the end-all be-all of hip-hop. But you were allowed to listen to him if you were a white kid.
That's very true.
But I mean, that's pretty cool that people are starting to take notice. Do you think that's where you're musically headed, or is that just kind of a convenient outlet for the times we're living in, because you can't go do live music and stuff?
Wow, damn, that's a good question. I'd say it's kind of both, because it is definitely convenient. But I've honestly always had like a love for this kind of music in all its forms. It's electronic stuff in general. There's so many different artists, so many different creators, and there's so many different things to listen to. So I've always wanted to be able to make something like that. And so with all this going on, it was like, this is the time to learn. This is the time to just make things and just improve as a producer and just see what I can do.
I mean, that's pretty cool. Are you interested in producing for other people as well?
Possibly. I don't know if I'm at that level yet. Every once in a while, I do get, some kind of job will fall into my lap or somebody hires me for something, but it's very rare. Maybe in the future I would do it, but I'm still pretty new to it.
Yeah, it's kind of like me with writing. I'm pretty confident in my skills as a writer. I'm less confident that I can produce something somebody else wants from me.
Okay, yeah.
If that makes sense. Like, I'm really good at, if I may say so, making the stories I want to make, but writing something as a story based off, or a piece of content even, they're blogger for hire or whatever jobs. I don't know that I can do that. I don't know if I have the discipline or the attention span for it. But which is something that's always interested me about music producers, because you can, by the nature of what you do, unless you're even somebody like LP, who's produced all his own albums and produced all the Run the Jewels shit, still did jobs for hire and was really good at it. That seems like a singular challenge.
Yeah. I don't really know for sure. I mean, because it's like I haven't quite found myself in a situation like that as far as music goes, but I can imagine that even as successful as a musician like LP is, just because of the world and how it's changing today, it's like you can't, like you just said, it's like you can't even tour right now, so it's like you've always got to have other means of revenue. You've always got to be finding something new to do, and if you can find that working for other people, then that's fantastic. I've always thought it'd be cool, but honestly, like I'd love to just be able to create whatever I want, and if people pay me for that, that'd be great. But I'm just curious about the journey. I'm just seeing what happens. No real plan.
Well, are you still working on stuff for the Yeti? How would you just, first off, CJ has a solo kind of rock music project called the Yeti. There's like an emo bent to it slightly. I don't exactly know what to call it. Power pop, maybe?
I guess the term nowadays would be like bedroom pop.
Okay.
I always used to consider it kind of like indie rock stuff. But yeah, I guess there definitely is like an emo influence. Now that I'm like old enough to like to know my guilty pleasures as a kid, it's like, Armor for Sleep and Save the Day and stuff like that. Like, so there definitely is that touch to it. But so there's A Bad Night for a Hero. That's like my band, and that was kind of what I originally started out as. But as I developed my bands and like we actually had a consistent one, because I've gone through so many different members, gone through so many musicians who've kind of like been honorary members of it. I decided that I needed to have like a solo name for stuff that I did by myself. And so that became the Yeti. And so I'm trying to focus a little bit more on kind of lo-fi acoustic stuff. And when I say like lo-fi, I guess I mean more like Mac DeMarco, artists like that who are just very chill, just relaxed and kind of easygoing.
Yeah.
But with the Bad Night for Here, I'll definitely be kicking up like the indie emo rock stuff.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
One day when you can.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. What got you into music in the first place? I mean, you're still a pretty young guy.
I'm 30. What are you talking about?
You're 30?
Yeah.
No, you're not.
Yeah.
You are?
Yeah.
I thought you were like 24.
No. I get that a lot though.
Yeah. Well, you've got a youthful face.
I'll take it. I'll take it.
But I mean, I'm only 32. It's not like either of us are ancient.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's a sea change happening in what age means in art. You know, most successful indie bands don't get successful until their guys are in their late 20s, early 30s at this point. And part of that's probably because the emphasis isn't on rock music anymore.
Right.
But you know, I don't think there's anything. I think there's going to have to be a change in perception. If you don't make it in music by the time you're 25, you're wasting your time, because that's just not true anymore.
It is kind of like one of those, like, I don't know what to call it, but it's like a warning, you know, to all creative types. It's like, well, if you haven't made it by this, you know, this point in your life, then you should just stop, you know. It's like,
go work at a bank.
Yeah, and it's kind of dangerous thinking, because it's like, well, you know, think of how many people are like in jobs that they hate. And it's like, well, I'll never be an artist because I'm 26. You know, I just missed the cutoff. You know?
I mean, and I didn't start stand-up till I was 26.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, the concept of doing anything, because I was in the Army. That's how I got to Colorado Springs. The concept of doing anything either not Army related or not on Tejon Street, you know, was just not, it wasn't even considered. I think I saw 2 shows at the Black Sheep the 5 years I was at Fort Carson.
Wow. Okay.
You know, it just wasn't something I did, because it wasn't something any of my friends did. And then like the second I got out, I'm like, I'm gonna be a show photographer. And I hung out at the Black Sheep for like 3 months taking pictures of people. And then I realized that musicians don't have money, and this is not a viable revenue stream.
Yeah.
And if I wanted to be out and making things, I needed to make things more personal than capturing somebody else's art.
Yeah.
And so I still love photography, and I still show photography. For me, is the closest thing I can get to combat photography. And combat photography is a lot of fucking fun. Like, I know, like, saying that as someone who did not see a lot of real combat, going out on missions, taking pictures of soldiers doing kinetic things, was the part of my job I enjoyed the most in the Army. But then I found comedy and almost immediately stopped taking pictures of shows.
Wow, okay.
It was like, I'm gonna focus all my energy on this fruitless endeavor that nobody asked me to do and nobody really wants me here, but I can't stop doing it.
I mean, that's the beautiful thing about art, right?
Yeah. Well, and the funny thing was, I was probably getting more validation from taking pictures than I was from comedy, certainly for the first year. But it was definitely a more personal thing to me. I don't know why I got off on this tangent. I'm interviewing you.
No, it's okay. I'm curious. I love hearing this. You mentioned Fort Carson.
Yeah.
That is where I started playing music.
Is it?
Yeah. I wasn't technically a military brat. I don't like to use that term just because my mom married my stepdad. He was in the military, and so we moved on to Fort Carson, but we never actually moved out of state. So
Right.
I've always been here. So it's kind of weird to consider myself
An army brat. You didn't go live in Vincenza or something
exactly
for a year.
exactly. But we grew up on Fort Carson, with all the kids there, and emo, screamo, hair metal, and just black metal, just all that
Yeah.
stuff. That was like all the rage back then, and everybody loved that stuff. And as a kid, that's kind of what I was exposed to. And everybody wanted to be in a band, and everybody wanted to do music, and I thought that stuff was cool. And I tried it, and to varying degrees of success. And at some point, I just started trying to produce music on my own. I just decided that I could make music. Why do I have to wait on a band or something to do it with me? So I've been doing it since I was like 15, which is wild. But it started on Fort Carson, moved off to like Southgate, and started going to shows, and started making connections. And next thing I knew, like, I started playing all the time, and 15 years later, here we are.
Well, and you're producing shows. You produced the Red-Headed Zombie show.
Mm-hmm.
Red-Headed Zombie show, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And which is rad. You get touring artists, you get local artists, you get visual artists to come in and do stuff a lot. Which is cool.
That's another kind of bummer this year. I haven't really been able to do any of that stuff. But we'll see what happens. But yeah, it is a blast to do those shows.
Yeah, that last show I went to at Barquet.
Mm-hmm.
That was, goddamn, that was fucking Halloween.
Yeah.
I that's the last one I went to. I think.
Yeah, it was Halloween. On my part, it's a little weird because I'd kind of told myself that after that show we would be taking a break.
And now you have to.
Yeah, now we have to. And so it's like, I took a little bit of personal time to kind of recollect myself. And I was like, all right, I'm ready to come out of this cave. And then it's like, you should stay in your cave. That's what everyone's saying. Stay in your cave. You're not missing too much. And just...
I kind of have the opposite thing going on because I was finally gonna do some shows out of state over the summer, and working out of school, I was finally in a place where I could conceivably do that and not lose my job and not lose all my revenue by touring a little bit. And I wasn't gonna do anything big, but I was so excited for it, and just all of it went away. And I got very sad for a minute there. And now I've just it's morphed into anger, and I'm just angry at everything. But
understandable. It's
what was the decision to take a break? Was that just burnout, or?
Burnout is a big part of it. I don't know how deep we're gonna get, but I've been working on a lot of these projects for like the last 10 or so years, for a very long time. And, it kind of hit me that it was like, man, like I put a lot of effort into working with other artists, kind of like you were talking about the photography and things like that, where it's like I put a lot of effort into helping other people and like getting their music out there and things like that. And I realized that I wasn't really taking care of myself in the sense that I wasn't really working on my art. And I wasn't really improving as an artist because all my time was going into producing these shows and things like that. And I, don't get me wrong, I do love that. And I love being part of the community and helping people, because there's a lot of talented people in this town that I believe, right? I say town, the city. A lot of talented people who I think deserve to be heard. And that was kind of the original mission. But somewhere in that, I kind of lost myself. And so I'm taking this time to just improve, picking up where I left off, and I'm just okay, like let's become a better artist, and when I come back, the shows will be even better.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited to get back out and just watch shows again.
Yeah.
I've done one comedy show since this all started.
Right.
I did it at the Brass Brewing Company
Okay.
a few weeks ago, and I very very nervous to do it. I'm still not sure that it was the right thing to do. Morally at this point in history, I was really conflicted about being on the show, and it's hard to say no to things, and it's especially hard to say no to things that you love so goddamn much, and I said yes, and it was a very good show.
Okay.
But again, was it the right thing to do? I ask me in a year, and I may say no. That was an irresponsible thing to do. I don't know. There were precautions. There was social distancing, but still, there were people on first dates and shit, and that doesn't seem like something that should be happening right now.
Yeah, America's kind of really bizarre right now because it's like, yeah, there's a pandemic, but we still kind of are going about our lives. And I'm trying not to like judge anyone unless they're like actively going out of their way to, copying people's faces, refusing to wear masks and things like that. But, it's almost like there's so much stress and things that has built up over the last few months. It's like we need something to kind of take the edge off because it's just a lot. And there's just so much stuff that's out of our control, so what else can you do but have a laugh?
Yeah, I mean, I know some people are doing internet shows, Zoom shows, or there's shows on Animal Crossing now.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, but I think the successful versions of that are well connected, higher tier comedians than me. I can't. Maybe I could weasel myself on a small Zoom show, but I don't know how many people would be watching. Not that has ever mattered to me too much. Some of the best shows I've ever had were in front of 4 people. But
a true artist.
Yeah, well, only because they were really cool. I did a show, the last gallery show that I did that was really poorly attended. We were lucky enough to have like 4 red hat ladies show up that were just drunk off their ass on wine and so much fun.
Okay.
And not a fan of heckling, but when there are 4 people in the audience, you're having a conversation. And it was just I was really bummed out that so few people. I think there were probably 8 people there, but these 4 ladies made the show so worth it. And then after that, for whatever reason, the show took off again, and the last few before we had to stop doing shows had like 40 people at them. Nice. In the gallery. I've had you on a gallery show before.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You did the storyteller show, right?
Mm-hmm.
In that little space, 40 people is about as many people as
should be in there
as you need in that room.
Yeah.
Like a 10-person show in that room feels pretty good. And the most packed I think it's ever been in there was 50, and you could not squeeze another person in there. It's like, please don't touch the walls. There are paintings on them. But
well, hopefully when this is over, you can pick it back up. Just
I mean, I hope so. I hope everything's up in the air with every with every venue. The Zodiac closed down. Which
that's a hard one.
Fucking hurt. I've talked about the Zodiac on the first episode and probably the second episode, and I think the third episode as well. The Zodiac's my favorite place to perform, not because it's the best room I've ever performed in, but because it's the place that was my home. The Monday night open mic at the Zodiac was my shit. That's
I used to love going to that, and so many memories of like just going out to get a drink, and it's like, well, maybe I'll just play a song, like
Yeah.
my guitar's in my car, and I've even had like my drummer like just get up there and we've just jammed out, and it's a place where anybody could just hang out and just kind of chill and fit in, and I'm really sad that it's gone.
Yeah,
Like,
there were really no wrong answers, which was kind of the cool. I saw burlesque there.
yeah, yeah.
I saw weird performance art pieces on occasion. They weren't, it was mostly comedy and music, but you'd get poets who were dealing with some shit, and then you'd have to get up and tell dick jokes. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, she was also talking about penises, but not in the same way I am. And I'm sorry. But
I definitely feel like I took it for granted because I didn't even consider that it might not be around. It just feels like it came out of nowhere, like all of this.
yeah, I mean, well, and intellectually, you might recognize that things are going to be different, but that was the longest running open mic, and one of two or three pillars in this town of independent art.
Yeah.
We live in a conservative city,
Mm-hmm.
maybe the largest conservative city in the country.
Really?
And
I didn't know that.
I one of like the three largest, I think.
I guess I could see that. It's just that.
Because even you go to Texas, Houston's still a pretty liberal town, all things considered. You are in Texas, but it's a city.
Yeah.
And there are
yeah.
people of color there. And this is a very white, pretty large city with 5 military bases and some Christian organizations
Yeah.
that have a lot of money and sway over local politics, and it's hard to get an independent scene going in a city like this.
Yeah.
A city this size, it shouldn't be that hard, but I feel like we're always fighting to create things.
Yeah, I agree. That was kind of another challenge of the Red-Headed Zombie show is just, I guess for a long time I didn't want to admit, like what you were just saying, because the people that I see are pretty down to earth or, really cool. And there's so many, like I said, so many artists in the downtown area.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I spent a lot of my time, and so when you start realizing that politics and other things kind of they play a part in this,
right,
in the scene and how it functions, and it's like, oh wow, yeah, we're there's a lot of people who don't want this to happen,
well,
or don't care to help it,
Yeah, it's for maybe the first 3 or 4 years I was on the scene here. I really wanted to find a way to bridge the gap between the military bases and what we were doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I could never wrap my head around how to do it. And eventually I just kind of wrote it off.
Mm-hmm.
And if somebody else can figure out how to get 20-year-old soldiers to care about local art, come talk to me, because we got to do some shit. But it just wasn't something I ever figured out how to do. And it's a shame because I was in the Army. These guys are young, they've got a lot of energy, and they like to drink. On paper, they're everything you want from a monetary perspective when it comes to the arts, because they've got disposable capital,
mm-hmm.
and they don't have a lot of common sense. So I am speaking as one of them. I'm not talking down to the military. I am you. This is who I was when I was 21 to 24, 25 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And could have made, if there were a way to bridge that gap, it would be great for this town.
Yeah, I agree.
But everybody's just trying to get laid, and they're going to Cowboys. Not that there's anything wrong with Cowboys. Well, look, I don't want to hang out there. That's all I'm gonna say.
Okay.
But
that's like my favorite place in town. That's where I go. Like
is
every
it
night.
now?
Just Cowboys,
Yeah, line dancing. On
Exactly. Yeah.
ladies' night on Wednesdays or whatever it is.
That's what I've been doing. Everyone's like, "Where's CJ? Line dancing at Cowboys." Well, not anymore, but
Yeah. Oh my God, I spent more time on that street in those terrible clubs, and just all of my friends trying to hook up, spending way too much money on booze. You go a block away and this beer is $2 cheaper.
Yeah.
And guess what? We can actually have a conversation and meet people. But no, let's go dance. That's what I want to do.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I do actually like dancing, but yeah, it is a very different vibe, just depending on like which little section of downtown you're in, which block you're on.
Yeah. There are some really cool places downtown, and there's some really cool places on Tejon Street. I'd say it's just that little section where every single Thursday, Friday, Saturday, you've got the same fucking crowd. It's like the frat bars in a college town.
Yeah. I mean, it's not too far off, and not to mention, there's a certain college that's not too far.
That's
from downtown
true,
too,
actually.
So.
And that's the other thing. I don't want to speak for you. Maybe my biggest failing, because scratch the military stuff. It's probably never going to happen. We're never going to get that audience. Why don't we have a better grip on the colleges in this town?
Man, well, that's a good question.
I'm trying to figure this out because you're a producer too. You make shows and you've been doing it for a long time. So,
well, I think a big part of it is that we've had a lot of really cool venues, but then there are some that just don't really appeal to that demographic. You know what I mean? Like a lot of them are kind of grungy. They're they don't always cater to newer fans of music because they're only playing. I'll say that in Colorado, metal is a big thing here, and other bands like that. And I'm not saying they're bad or anything, but that isn't for everybody. And there are like a lot of crazy house shows that used to happen just kind of like here and there, and I'd see a lot of college kids at those shows. But then you get these really bizarre acts. You get these really interesting musicians coming through and things like that. And so I think that's kind of where that crowd went. They went to the house shows. They weren't going to bars.
Okay. Yeah, I've performed on house shows, but that's not like a there's not a comedy shorthand for house shows. House shows are for music.
Right.
The music community produces them and makes them. And while I personally think that mixed shows where you're doing music and comedy and performance art and stuff are a lot of fun, I completely get why people who produce music shows are like, it's way simpler if I just go to my friends and get a bunch of bands that I can rely on and nobody's going to say the N-word.
Right.
Like I get it, in a certain, it's weird because rock stars are seen as like agents of chaos in a way comedians aren't usually.
Yeah.
But as a producer, it's kind of safer to book the metal band instead of that weird comic guy you met at the open mic who you can't really co-sign all his jokes.
That is true, but I think generally I'd like to believe that most people, even though maybe some jokes obviously you can offend somebody without even trying, but ultimately it's like I'd like to believe that most people aren't generally trying to be offensive, and so I still hold hope that we can have mixed shows like that.
Yeah.
Because I've always really enjoyed that. And trust me, there are plenty of problems with just straight up music shows. Just I think shows in general are
Right.
a challenge, and there are plenty of bands I've seen who are so bad or offensive that people have just straight up left.
Right.
It's a rare occurrence.
Right.
It's a rare occurrence, but I have seen certain musicians clear out a room.
Yeah.
So
Happens a lot more at an open mic than a show.
fair
You
enough.
know?
Fair enough. When it happens at a show, it's pretty bad.
Yeah.
And it reflects on you as well.
Yeah.
Not to call anybody out, not to insult anybody, but so it's just one of those challenges.
It's a stressful thing as a producer
Mhm.
because generally you want to book people that you believe in,
Yeah, of course.
but you also want to give somebody you think may have some raw talent that they're still building their skills around.
Yeah.
And sometimes that backfires.
Hmm.
And sometimes you're wrong.
Well, I think a big part of it is even if you're not the best musician or whatever, it's I'll still always give somebody a chance, to
Right.
perform. Everyone deserves a chance to be heard, even if they're not, super professional. But I think it comes down to people's attitude and how they carry themselves. And if you're very self-righteous and very full of yourself and you don't have the talent to back that up, you just kind of look silly, and people notice
Yeah.
that and they'll call you out on that.
It's a very nice way of saying that. So you're a very tactful person. No, I don't know why they booked me versus some other people, but I did get to do a short comedy set at 719 Grind a couple years ago.
Yeah, okay.
And which was cool. It's a metal festival put on here in the Springs. It's very DIY. There are a lot of cool bands that perform on it, but they'd never done comedy before.
Oh boy.
And so they book, I think, somebody booked the comedy acts that knew I liked punk rock.
Okay.
And so basically I think that was my only bar for entry at this show. And so John Bueno was on that show, and John has been in the music scene in Colorado, in greater Colorado area, longer than pretty much any other, or definitely longer than he's been doing comedy.
Yeah.
And there were a couple other comedians on the show, and I was really excited just to be a part of something as cool as 719 Grind.
Yeah.
And then I go up and I'm doing my jokes, and there's this one guy
Oh boy. Okay.
this one guy who clearly was not having a good time. Everybody else was laughing. We were outside and it was daylight, not the best venue for comedy.
Yeah.
But everybody was having a pretty good time. Everybody tended to like my set, and this guy came up to me after and he's like, so what are you trying to say up there? What are you trying to say up there? It's I don't know, man. I'm just trying to be funny, but I do think it's important to poke fun at authority.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. And he's like, well, I thought what you said was very misogynistic and very offensive. And I'm like, hey, man, you can think that if you want. I'm sorry you didn't have a good time.
Yeah.
But I did tell jokes, about my wife, and I will say that she thinks those jokes are very funny. And he was like, hey man, you got a microphone, you've got a responsibility, bro.
Oh, God. Yeah. All that power. Yeah.
It's all right, go front your fucking crust punk band, bro.
Yeah. Okay. I guess I can see kind of what comes with performing what may be taboo subjects or things that people, like I said, there's so many different ways to interpret a single joke, and
well, and I am making fun of my wife, who is a wonderful person, and one particular joke, say I'm going to shove her in an oven. Because it's a Hansel and Gretel joke, and I stand by it.
Yeah, I mean, but if you tell dark jokes, I mean, that's Andrew.
Yeah, it was just funny that and I didn't really like think about it beforehand, but it's good, but there's a very strong like feminist element to independent music, which is fucking important, and I'm glad it's there. But if you take yourself that seriously, you're never gonna laugh at anything, bro, and you're gonna be very sad for most of your life. He was just trying to be an ally.
Okay. I guess it just all depends. Because there's even been stuff that I've written that some people have been like, well, I don't like that, and it's like, I don't know what to tell you. Like that was me in the moment when I wrote this. I was not trying to be offensive or anything like that. I just try to take it, and if it is something, if I have made a mistake, then I try to learn from it. But me personally, knowing you, I can't imagine, even if you're talking about your wife, who I've also met and is very nice. I think people just sometimes need to just chill. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I'm not one of those people that's like, I have told jokes I should not have told. Very early on.
Okay.
I had an N-word in a set.
Okay.
And I'm not even saying no white comic should ever use it, ever. I'm just saying it better be the funniest fucking joke on the planet. If you're a white guy going there, it better, and mine wasn't. It certainly wasn't. It was a really hacky dissecting rap lyrics joke that I think every comic has early on.
Well, I can appreciate it. I appreciate you being forthcoming about it.
Yeah, I just every artist will make mistakes. Every artist will say or make things that may not even come from a good place. You may make something from the wrong place. But do you learn? Do you change your behavior when you learn better? That's the.
I would hope so. It's one thing to make like the joke or a song or something, out of a place of maybe not malice, but maybe you just don't know better, I guess I'll say, or ignorance, whatever. But if you do know better and you still do it, then you're kind of...
You're an asshole. It's okay. You can say it. Well, let's start. I mean, you are coming from a background in indie music, and especially in, say, pop punk or emo music. There's a lot of misogyny there.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot of stuff that didn't age well.
No, and it's still kind of pervasive.
Do you think so?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Do you feel like, is that something you're conscious of when you're writing songs? Is like, this is the feeling I'm having, but from another perspective, maybe. Do you try to look at things from other perspectives when you're writing?
Yeah, to an extent. I think that when it comes to writing about emotions and things like that, which is mostly what my songs are about, it's like there is like a personal element, and so maybe, like I said, maybe you're not trying to be malicious. And when I write, I'm usually writing about like some kind of experience I've had, but generally I try to make sure that it's very clearly conveyed that these were my feelings or my emotions in the moment of whatever scene or setting I'm discussing, but I never try to put those on anyone else.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, unless somebody deliberately did something malicious, but I've never tried to turn that into, well, I felt like, so-and-so should have done this, and so now they're an a-hole, an asshole, whatever.
Right. You don't have to swear if you don't want to, CJ.
I haven't actually been like on a recording for a while, so it's like, oh man, like how to talk like a human. But as far as misogyny goes, like I still feel like it's a really big thing, especially like and pop music and stuff like that. It's like in the lyrics and things like that. And so I do sing a lot about women and like love and sex and whatever, but I try to make sure that everyone I talk about is treated or talked about respectfully, if that makes sense. Or I'm not trying to assert my emotions onto them. I'm just displaying my emotions. Does that make sense?
I think it does, and I think that's a very mature, take, because it's, especially with anything emotional, it's hard to separate yourself from.
Yeah.
And it's hard not to see what you're feeling as empirical truth.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which, I mean, God knows I'm as guilty of it as anybody. And, I like to think I'm a very dispassionate, I was a journalist, don't you know? But my feelings influence actions, but if feelings dictate actions, you're probably gonna be in the wrong at least half the time.
Yeah.
So I think it's a very mature way to approach making music. You want to talk about art for a bit?
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Let's what would you say your primary medium is when it comes to visual art?
Well, okay. Quick disclaimer. This is kind of weird because I don't really consider myself much of a visual artist. I do.
You're really good at it.
Well, I don't. Usually, what I do is I'm. So this feels weird to like say this on this, but
no, it's okay.
I feel like there's a misconception. I don't really draw. I'm not really, like I haven't really drawn anything in a very long time.
Really?
I might create digital art sometimes, and I do like video editing and things like that. But most of the time when there's like art, sorry, art associated with my music, that is not me. Usually,
okay.
Usually I hire other people who I really appreciate. Like I said, so many talented artists in this town. So they might take a concept that I've drawn and kind of improve on it, but I am not an artist. And it's just kind of funny you mention that, just because like in the past, you're talking about people hiring for work. I've been hired as an artist, and I've tried to tell people like I don't know how to draw. And it's like, no, you're gonna do this, and I'm like, I can't do this, And I've tried. I'm a so graphic designer, But,
right.
I get by. But yeah, I'm not really a visual artist. I focus mostly on music and writing.
Okay. Well, fair enough. I honestly, like, I've seen some of the things you've drawn, and probably more of your graphic art stuff. So I just assumed it was like a fucking revenue stream for you.
No,
but
I wish, but...
So, well, let's talk about how you incorporate art then, because you are I would say an aesthetically minded artist. Even when it comes to music, when it comes to the Red-Headed Zombie show, there's always a very strong visual theme to the things you do. How like maybe not to the extent that of say a Jack White or something, but it's on your mind, and how did that become a part of your process?
I've always appreciated art, even though I'm not very good at it, and comic book art and things like that. Stuff like that I feel is kind of underappreciated, and sometimes when reading or enjoying certain art pieces, in my head, it's like I'd hear music to go with it. And so I've always just kind of thought that they can be separate, but when they work so well together, I think it's just an amazing thing. That said, way back when I first started even like doing shows, I decided that one way to stand out was to always have good art associated with what I did. Just because like you'd see a lot of flyers and it's like come see Joe Schmo at this bar,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's just a typical black and white flyer, and it's just like, well, what makes that interesting, But if you give people artwork, if you give them something interesting to look at, and you're like, well, hey, you can see plenty more of this if you come to this show, or if you enjoy this kind of content, there is more of this, and so that has brought in a lot of artists. I've been lucky to know so many artists, and have been honored to like have them work on the Red-Headed Zombie show, to contribute their time. And we made like an art book years ago, of all this stuff, because there's just so many great artists, and it was all of them that kind of helped bring people in. It created something that stuck in people's heads, and it's that's always been important to me. As far as aesthetic itself, that just kind of depends on my mood. Sometimes, sometimes I'm really into more modern art, just kind of odd looking things, and sometimes it's just, like I said, it's like that kind of comic book action oriented style. Very cool, cyberpunk, things like that. So it really just depends. But I just feel like art is a really important thing to draw people in. Even when it comes to music, like before light faster travels faster than sound, so you see something, you get more of a reaction immediately than you would hearing it, I guess. I don't know, I'm talking out of my ass now, but I feel like there's something there.
It's weird. And I feel like maybe if I had gone to school for photography, as opposed to just, oh, you're a journalist in the Army, you also take pictures now. My aesthetic palette would be better. But it's something that's always, I've had really shitty show posters before, and I'm embarrassed to share them, and every once in a while, my most recent, it sucks because I finally got it like a month before everything shut down, but my monthly poster for the gallery show was a Charlie McMullen piece. And Charlie's great. He's got a very cartoonist style, but it's always funny, which is good for comedy, and it's very well done. And he can do things with markers that fine artists use. $300. I don't know what fine artists use. Never mind. I'm talking out of my ass too.
Well, I know what you mean though. Like he can use something as simple as like a marker or something and make something really beautiful, when most people just a Sharpie's a Sharpie.
Yeah. Okay. I have to pee really bad, so we're going to pause, and then we'll come back and talk about money.
Cool. Audacity.
Okay, now we're recording again.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm just getting used to this. I went to pee, and then we started talking about some interesting stuff, and should have been recording. But yeah, we were talking about writing, and I was saying that while I like someone like Neil Gaiman for tone and for content, I'm much more Hemingway-esque in the sparseness of my writing, and you were saying you were kind of the opposite.
Yeah. Reading Stephen King, I know a lot of people, they kind of dislike how he tries to put like a phone book inside of his stories.
I love him, by the way. I think he's great.
Oh yeah.
Or Stephen King is such a good writer, you forget he's a bad writer 20% of the time.
Yeah,
that's what I'll say.
Okay.
That's my hot take on Stephen King.
I love him, even though he's not perfect, but I still appreciate all of his books. So for me, being detail oriented was a big part of it. But now that I'm like older, it's like, oh man, like why did I write all this? Why was this necessary?
Right.
But it does paint a picture, and I think for some storytellers that is important, like a picture, a very vivid image of like everything happening.
Right.
But I do love stories that are just like, it's very like this is Bob. You don't need to know what Bob looks like.
Right.
It's just about what Bob is doing, what he's going through. Boom.
Yeah. Which I will say there are stories where it matters, and there are stories where it doesn't.
Yeah.
I am working on a novel. It's the rough draft was finished 2 years ago.
Okay.
The second draft's done. I should have finished the third draft last month, and I haven't yet.
Hey,
but
still, that's still a lot of progress.
I'm getting very close to needing an actual editor. It's gone through the first round of beta readers.
Crazy. Okay.
But it is a book where not a single person is described with anything other than their age or their gender.
Crazy.
And I thought that was important for this particular story. And most of my short stories, because I write a short story every month, most of my short stories are the same way, and that probably has more to do with time than anything, because I'm trying to hammer something out. But that being said, the next story I'm writing, or the next book, the next novel I have planned when I finally get to it, every character is going to be described in great detail, because it's a story about people from very different backgrounds coming together, and those backgrounds are important, and so their aesthetics are important, and that wasn't the case with this first story. Literally any character in the book I'm writing right now could be any race.
Okay.
Because it has no bearing on the story. And I felt like, and look, I'm a cis white guy. There is a very good chance that every character is going to be coded as cis and white, or not. There are allusions to some characters who may be of a different sexual preference, but orientation. I'm sorry, not preference, but there are allusions to that, and God knows, if I ham-fisted it, I ham-fisted it. I'm doing my best over here, guys. But there's I have to come to terms with the fact that if this is coded as white, it's coded as white. I did my best to make it inclusive as possible, so anybody reading the story can identify with the characters. Now, I'm going to have a very diverse cast in my next story, but I'm going to be descriptive about it, and hopefully in a cogent and not problematic way, because that's a big battle that's being fought in literature right now, is descriptions of people of color and stuff. And I want to be sensitive, and I don't want to be a hack. Yes, I do want it for the right reasons, but also some selfish reasons. I want to do a good job.
I can respect that.
Yeah, but so are you going deep on character, on setting, on all of that?
It kind of depends on the job. Right now, there are a lot of projects that I am working on. Like I've got a rough draft finished for a novel, but I honestly haven't touched it in quite a while. I've been taking freelance commission work. That's kind of what I do in between like major jobs. So it really just kind of depends on what people ask me for, as far as like sci-fi or horror characters. And it's like, well, I just want this like story. I want this. But I don't want any of this, So sometimes they really just want action. Sometimes they really want, really character-driven stuff with dialogue. That's where I struggle.
Okay.
I'm not very good.
We should hang out and write sometime, because I'm as the comedian like the whole reason I started comedy was, this will make me better at dialogue, and I think it kind of did.
Okay.
So.
That's one of those areas where, especially recently, I've been like everything I write, I'm like, what is this? And I've written like some very short scripts. I work with Randall Bell, and like sometimes we put stuff together, and we'll try to like workshop together and just write stuff. In the dialogue, I'm always like, man, like what? Like I don't know. I don't know. I just don't have a good grasp on it.
Yeah. Do you think? I don't want to be disparaging, but
Okay.
to comic book writing. But we were talking about this before we started recording about how uh, dialogue is really tricky in comic books, and sometimes there's not a lot of depth there. It's just people saying exactly what they think. Do you think being such a comic fan is hindering you in that regard when it comes to your prose writing?
I don't know. Maybe because
Shot in the dark, and I don't want to be disparaging to you or comic book writers, but
I mean, because I think there are obviously there are good dialogue. There is good dialogue, not right here, but there is good dialogue in comic books. But I have definitely seen very bad dialogue in comics more often than not. Stuff where I've had to like put down a comic because I'm like, what is this? But I've also seen that kind of work, like in manga, things like that. Like a lot of the characters in like stuff like One Piece, they do speak from their mind or whatever. And sometimes there's like some depth to it. But I think honestly I do suffer from trying to write more like a comic book character than real people, I guess. So maybe it's kind of like a stylistic thing, but if you don't do it well, it falls apart very quickly, and it just
there's like a small secret part of me that's like, maybe one day I could write a comic book. It's like I don't have the chops, I don't have the pedigree, I certainly wouldn't have earned it, but like there are a few ideas I have that are like, this would just be better in a visual medium.
Yeah.
But
I say give it a shot. You know what I mean? Because you could even do like a really short one, like 5 pages or something like that. And it's just kind of like writing a script,
Yeah.
And I do agree that sometimes I do have ideas where I'm like, man, like this would be a great story, but without that visual aspect, it's a little bit harder to convey,
Yeah, I wrote a TV pilot.
Okay, cool.
And I put it up on my blog. If you want to check it out and give me notes, I'd be curious.
Okay.
Because it didn't really go through the notes process at all. But it's a half-hour sitcom about a guy who goes to work at an evil corporation, which is literally an evil corporation. Like, the legal department are all vampires and marketing are succubi, and and so it would be like a Monster of the Week show. Like it would be like Buffy the Vampire Slayer mixed with the IT crowd.
Okay.
And these guys work in the human being, because of affirmative action, gets a job in the mailroom at this evil corporation. But it's like I live in Colorado Springs. I'm a comedian. One day, it'd be great to work in TV, but it's not going to happen anytime soon. And a part of me is like, there are visual elements. There are such visual jokes, and it's such a high concept idea that just writing the story version of this doesn't cut it. Which is why I wrote it as a screenplay or a sitcom script. But I think it would work as a comic in that it is a supernatural story, but it's also kind of strange because I don't know that there's a one-for-one like comparison between sitcoms and a comic book style.
Okay.
So like I don't think there's a comic book version of sitcoms, and I could totally be wrong because I don't know everything about the genre, but I think it'd be fun.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's like I guess the closest thing I'd say is maybe like slice of life comics.
Okay.
Like indie comics that are just kind of about average, I say average, not superheroes.
Right.
And they can be comedic, and it's just like their everyday lives. Like
Giant Days, I think, is the only one I've read like that.
Yeah.
Which I kind of want to get back. I torrented like all of Giant Day. When I first started reading comics, I
Okay.
torrented everything up to the point that had been released, and that was like 5 years ago. So I got to get back into it.
I was buying that like regularly. That's funny. Like I haven't thought about it in forever until you just said that.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh yeah, Giant Days. Yeah.
This story about British college girls.
Yeah.
I don't know why I like it, but I really liked it.
Yeah. It's really charming and nice and funny and.
Actually, that would make a good sitcom. That would
see?
legitimately. Why hasn't anybody made the Giant Days TV show?
Because they're all chasing down the superhero properties.
Yeah, lame. They made Ghost World though. They can make.
Yeah, man.
Ghost World would be a terrible TV show though. Like I like the movie, but boy, that is a. Do not draw that story out any longer. It's so awkward.
Yeah,
It doesn't need to be longer than it is. All right, let's talk about business. Do you have any other like writing stuff that's on your mind?
No.
Okay.
We can move on. Yes.
I'm sorry if I'm monopolizing the conversation,
No,
guys.
no.
I'm sorry, and I'm apologizing to the
wow.
listener, not to you, CJ. I don't give a fuck about you. No. I'm kidding. You're the coolest. So we've been talking a lot about producing shows, and in music and in comedy and most art forms, it is the opportunities to make money are more than ever, but the price point's the lowest it's ever been.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So how are you approaching making money at this point in artistic history?
That's a good question. Yeah, I feel like maybe I'm not the best qualified because I do.
Don't worry, every single guest I've had on has said the same thing. I got to get like Sean Astro on here, because he seems to be doing it right. But just whatever philosophy you have, whatever you're doing, whatever you're trying, you can share that.
I used to be one of those people who, I'd burn the CDs and the T-shirts and. Well, I wouldn't burn the T-shirts, but iron on, whatever.
Yeah.
Just whatever I could to get it out there in the hands of people. And I'd always try to like sell it at a reasonable price. Truthfully, I am not a very good businessman, just because, you really need to plan for a lot in advance. A lot of things that could go wrong. There's a lot of people out there who, you might try to get product through, who might try to screw you over. There's so many pitfalls. I've fallen into some traps and I've had issues. So if anything, I'm more of like don't do these things. If you ever feel somebody's like shady or you're getting a deal that's too good to be true, it probably is, But as far as making money in this era, it is really cool that, if you have content that people like, you can make a Patreon or whatever, and people can just give you money and to see that prosper or to see that flourish. And that's kind of what I would like to do, I guess, for now. In some other endeavors, other creative endeavors, I have been able to make money by creating things, but not enough to ever really live on. And so to me, it's like, okay, well now I need to get a bigger audience. I need to reach out to more people. Otherwise, I'm going to be stuck, at this very minimal point. But what works, just putting out content regularly. That's a big thing. And just, make sure that you're trying hard to improve and like put as much into it as you can so that people really feel like it's worth their time and money. And even if it's not, like kind of like we were talking about earlier, it's like even if it's not the best thing ever, if people know that you're trying, they're a lot more willing to give you something, to show their appreciation, but other than that, I don't know, because it's like CDs are kind of useless, and I've got a bunch of CDs.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, again, it feels like it was a really sudden thing. It was like, all right, I'm getting CDs burned. All right, these are really nice, the booklet, everything. Nobody buys them anymore. They're not even a thing. Even if you want to, it's like laptops don't have disk drives anymore, and it's just like
some cars don't anymore.
Yeah, it's an outdated medium now.
Yeah. And Spotify, I mean, I did the math, and maybe you have too, and I have the wrong numbers, but I did the math. It's like, I think 0.05 cents per stream.
Yeah, you have to get a lot of streams to make any money on that. And
it's
if you can get viral, you can blow up, fantastic. But
yeah. Well, I mean, and it's possible for somebody like you making the Chillwave stuff. It would be really funny after all these years, after bands, after solo projects, the stuff you're putting out in your bedroom. If that's what blew up on a playlist,
I would take it, and that'd be cool. It would be cool just to be recognized, I think, on that scale.
Yeah.
But yeah. If I could get Spotify money.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
I don't think I've talked about this on the podcast, and if I have, I'm sorry. I got on a playlist.
Oh, really?
My comedy album did.
Okay.
But not off of merit.
Oh boy.
Somebody compiled every single album that came out in 2019. Every single comedy album.
Okay.
That came out in 2019 that's on Spotify and put it on one list.
Wow.
And a lot of people listen to that.
Crazy.
So I have 11,000 streams on Spotify.
Congratulations.
Which is about $30. Which is still about 10,000 more streams than I thought I was going to get.
Yeah.
Now, again, not based off of merit. I am very proud of that album. If you are listening, you should listen to it. But I'm not going to pretend that my quote-unquote success on Spotify had fuck all to do with me.
I mean, my rebuttal would be, if people hated it and they didn't like it, the streams probably wouldn't keep coming in. You know what I mean? Like it might attract them, but I don't know. I think
well, it's
something keeps them. You know?
Let me ask you this: do you have the Spotify artist app where you can look at your streams and stuff, and do you look at it all the fucking time like a psycho? Because I do.
I don't have the Spotify app, but I do that with YouTube.
Yeah,
I look at all the analytics and SEO and all that stuff, and I'm like, man, only this many plays today, and you start looking at all that, and so I do obsess over that.
Yeah, I can't tell because a lot of people say it's unhealthy, and I almost feel like not checking in would make me crazier.
Yeah. I mean, you have to keep an eye on it,
I don't know. I mean, that being said, I can tell you with some certainty, because I keep checking the analytics, about 90% of my listens do come from that single playlist.
Okay.
I can also tell you that about 300 people have liked tracks and stuff, which, out of 10,000, that's 3% or less, but that's okay. I mean, I figure people are just putting that on shuffle, and if they happen to hear a track they like, they heart it. So I'm not super worried about that, but it's an interesting thought problem to figure out, okay, this thing's been out for 6 months. Is there anything I can do to raise awareness about it at this point? I've posted about it in the past 6 months 30 or 40 times on Facebook. I put it out on Twitter. It's my pinned tweet. What's the next thing? Because this is, in theory, a passive source of income and a calling card if to get booked, to get, I have this many streams.
Yeah.
This is the album. Listen to it. If you like it, please book me. So I look at it like that. But I don't know how. I don't know what the next step is, because you can only conceivably make a good comedy album once every 2 to 3 years. You cannot. you can count on one hand the number of comics who can make a good comedy album every year.
Damn.
And
Okay.
even they start showing signs of wear and tear after like year 3.
What makes it so difficult to do that?
Well, I think there are a couple things. As opposed to music, a joke isn't done when you're done writing it. So when you write a song, you write it in your room or at a coffee shop, whatever your process is. You write the song's done. I write a joke, probably takes a lot less time to write, but I have to go to an open mic that night. And then I have to go to another open mic, and then I have to go to another open mic. And hopefully after a week, there's a serviceable version of that joke I might be able to do on a show.
Okay.
But some jokes take longer. And jokes are never finished. There are jokes that I wrote my second year doing stand-up that changed the week before I recorded my album.
Okay.
I am not kidding. There are like 3 jokes on the album that are different than they were a week before the album was recorded.
Okay.
And so in that regard, it's not even that a joke takes longer to write. It's just you can only work on that joke in minute-long increments over the course of months, as opposed to I worked on this joke for 3 hours in my house over the course of a week, or however long. I know some songwriters take months to write a song, but so it's, and that's just one joke. And if you're going to open mics, you can do material you're working on every night. But if you're doing booked shows and if you're working the road, you have a responsibility to put on a really good show.
Right.
People are spending money to see you. You need to put on a good show, which means most of the stuff you do has to be good. And
right. You can't really take chances.
Yeah. You may have, if you're assuming only headliners were putting out albums, which is not true. I am not a headliner. But assuming you're a headliner and you're working on an album, sure, you get 45 minutes to an hour at a time to do jokes, but are you going to fill an hour with new jokes that you aren't perfect yet?
Yeah.
Because that's fucking irresponsible. I mean, there are guys like Chris Rock who buy out a comedy club for a week and say, I am working on my new hour. It will not be good. If you want to come see the process, come see me. And he's Chris Rock, so people want to see how Chris Rock works out.
Yeah. I didn't know he did that. That's cool.
Yeah. Or Dave Chappelle just stay on stage for 3 or 4 hours at a time. He'll repeat jokes. People come in and leave. So if you're big enough, or if you have quote unquote enough privilege in the business, there are shortcuts you can take. But for somebody like me, and especially with pandemic on, there will not be another comedy album until at least 2022, probably 2023. And so this is my one thing. This is my one album, and I think I'm a better comic than I was when I made it, or at least I was until the pandemic, and now maybe I suck. But anyway, I've been talking for far too long.
I don't know. This is really fascinating. This is really interesting.
But yeah, how does that let's bring this back around to your music. How often do you think you can put out quality material? Like, because your chillwave stuff is cool. Like, I am not an aficionado of the genre. A lot of it sounds the same to me, but that's also sort of the point.
Yeah.
If I'm putting on Chillwave, it's because I need something on
Very
in the
specific
background
vibe and-
that won't distract me while I'm writing.
Yeah.
That's about the only time I listen to it, but I do enjoy it. And I have no idea what any song is called.
That's one of the funny things about it. It's like you hear a song you like and you're like, oh, I really want to hear beep boop blop boop,
But is that something you can do every week, or?
I think it's a good question. I have been known to write lots of songs. I did like the Song a Day for a Year project.
Oh, did you? Was that a Jonathan Colton? Was he the guy that started that?
He might have been. He did like the song a week for like a whole year.
Oh, was it a week?
Like that. Or maybe
okay.
he did. He might have done like a Song a Day for a year. I'm trying to remember. Maybe I think he like released it in like weekly increments or something.
Oh, okay.
He did.
Okay.
He did it some way, but yeah, it's that same premise. So I did that like years ago, and even before then, I was always kind of writing music, and even now, I always have like some kind of idea floating in my head. And so like even my phone is like full of recordings, and truth be told, a lot of it's like shit. It's kind of like we were talking about the jokes. It's like I have like a thought, I'm like, oh, okay, let me get the demo. It's like, and it's like, okay, like totally gonna come back to that. And weeks later, it's like, oof, what was I thinking?
Yeah.
So I can come up with material really fast. The challenge now is producing it so it sounds good.
Right.
It's translating it from my head to the real world. Doing it super frequently, I honestly don't know. So we're gonna find out. That's kind of the test now. And it's like Chillwave is easy to write, I suppose, but I don't want to necessarily just be like. And this is not an insult to any other artist, and I know that you weren't trying to.
Yeah.
But a lot of it does sound the same, and some people I feel like are really cool with that, where they're like, oh yeah, I'm just doing my version of it, here it is. I would like to explore certain themes and musical ideas, and there are some great artists out there who really do put in an effort to make their vaporwave or chillwave or whatever you want to call it, they do something to make it special, and that's what I would like to do. But in the meantime, while working my way up to that, I'll just put out small tracks. Like I'm okay with that, and it's like a quick idea, boom, let's record it. It's done. That's content.
And most of the tracks you're putting out are about the size of a pop song.
Yeah.
At this point, right? And I, because it's always playlists and stuff, I honestly don't know how long the average like vaporwave song or chillwave or whatever song is.
Yeah.
Are they usually about that long, or are they more like 10, 20 minute fucking jams? I honestly couldn't tell you.
It just depends. I mean, there are like minute long ones, 30-second ones, and I think it just kind of depends on like sometimes it's the sample, and it's like the sample sounds really cool, but if I repeat this for like 2 minutes, you're gonna hate it. Yeah. So it's like let's keep this short. I like to keep them from like 1 to 2 minutes, just enough to keep people interested, bobbing their head, but it's not gonna drag on. But there are certain artists, and this is like beyond my scope. I couldn't do this, but like there's like an artist, I don't know the real name because it's like in Japanese, but it's like Telepath or something, and they write really beautiful stuff, but it's almost kind of like ambient background noise. So even like the sounds that your house is making right now, it's like that, but then it's like, but now there's vaporwave over it.
Right.
But they really take the time to let those songs breathe. And so that would be like a 10-minute song. I couldn't do that. Yeah, I couldn't do that. I don't have the patience in myself to do that. I don't know what I would do to keep it interesting, but it can be done, it seems to work.
Do you think you'll eventually work up to an album? Hey babe, my wife just walked in from work. We're almost done, I promise.
Good to see you. An album.
Is that something worth working towards in the vaporwave space, or is it just kind of, I'm gonna string these songs together and it's gonna be a YouTube playlist and that's what it's gonna be?
I would like to do an album for sure. I usually do have like big ideas like that, but I don't know. I can kind of see the appeal of just like putting things out and just kind of letting them be what they are. But there are great artists like Memorex Memories. He
Mhm.
just put it like he's putting his vaporwave like on vinyl, and that's like such
Oh,
a
that's a flex.
yeah, you know, and it's like okay, like it's working for somebody, but his stuff is really thematic in that it kind of each song kind of flows into the next,
Hmm.
but there is a clear difference between them, so you're not just kind of your brain isn't just off,
Right.
it's engaging. So I would definitely love to get to that point someday, but we will see.
Yeah, there's so I distributed my album through CD Baby, and there's an
Hmm.
option to make vinyl, and you've distributed through them too, haven't you?
Yeah, I've done
Yeah,
CDs. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
and it's like, okay, is my vanity to the point? No one will buy this, and also it's very expensive. Should I get five? No, no, I shouldn't.
No,
I'm not gonna
no,
do it.
they're still too
I,
expensive.
it's too expensive, and if you're at my level doing that, you're an asshole, right?
I mean,
Like,
sure, but I'll say I think that every artist, right, at some level, deserves to enjoy their work, and I just think it'd be really cool to have something I did pressed on vinyl,
yeah,
But you can't just buy one; you have to buy them in bulk. So it's
right.
like,
I think
okay,
you have to get at least 10 or something,
yeah,
and it's like.
yeah,
And we're not exactly rolling in the dough over here. I wanted to make the album as economical as possible
hmm
so I can break even, and I broke even.
oh,
And
good, good,
I sold enough physical copies to break even. That's what, as an indie comedian, that's the goal. That's
yeah,
that's all I wanted.
yeah.
So anything after that's fucking gravy.
I know a band. Speaking of like the business and monetary stuff, I know a band that kind of runs everything through like Kickstarter. Every
Mm-hmm.
time they want to do an album, like, okay, we've written this material, help us put it out. And
Mm-hmm.
the more you do, like, we're gonna get all these like artists to create the stuff, music videos, blah blah blah. But they're successful like every time, and it always goes like way beyond like what they were expecting. And they've like played for God, I'm gonna mispronounce this, like Catalonia or
The
like
Catalina wine tasting.
no, but they've played like for this like this country like flew them out, and they like
Oh wow!
played like their like national anthem or something like that, or they wrote them like a new anthem,
Whoa,
some crazy stuff. And it's just like, yeah, they're just the band who their success comes from Kickstarter. They do a
that's
Kickstarter
cool.
campaign, it succeeds, they tour, they sell their stuff, and it's a great business model for them. And it's like it'd be cool to get up to something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it all comes down to getting noticed.
Hmm. Hmm.
At some point, whatever talent you have in or even theoretically, whatever talent you don't have,
Hmm.
if the right people see you in the right setting and think you're cool, that can start something. Chances are it has to happen 3 or 4 or 5 times.
Hmm.
But the likelihood of that happening is completely left up to chance. There are things you can do. You can be vocal. You have to be vocal without being annoying, uh, and you have to be able to back up your promises with good content.
Yeah.
And that's always going to be a if making good content isn't a challenge for you, then I don't know. You're Paul McCartney, I guess. I mean, but it's the. I feel like the luck aspect of everything is always so stressful.
I agree, but
You
that's
know?
why in this day and age, it's like you can't just be an artist. You have to be a businessman on your own behalf.
Yeah.
You have to be the guy to stick your foot in the door or to, find the opportunities that are going to get you noticed. And that's a really big challenge, especially for one person to undertake.
It's a challenge in and of itself, but it's also a challenge because artistic people are often bad at everything that makes people good at business.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I mean, self-esteem plays a role. I don't like promoting my stuff. I feel like I'm annoying every single time I say, "Hey, listen to this thing I made."
Yeah. I feel the same
You
way.
know?
I feel the same way.
I have listened to a lot of your, not all of them, but you put out what, four or five of those vaporwave tracks now.
4 or 5 of this new project I did, and then like a few before that. But yeah, this is still fairly new.
Yeah,
Like, it hasn't even been a full
I think
year
I've listened to like 3 of them in the past few weeks, and I really liked them. I think you're doing good things.
Word, thank you.
Thank you. I hope that project works out and reaps dividends, and if it doesn't, it's still cool shit. So
yeah,
you know, it's
people have been buying the EP, so you know it's cool. Like,
hell
it's getting out there. So
is it on? Tell people where it's at. Tell people where they can get your stuff.
The EP I just put out is called Outside Dreamland. It's on Bandcamp, YouTube, and SoundCloud, and I'm working to get it on Spotify. It's kind of strange that that's like the norm now. Like,
yeah.
And it's so accessible to even guys like us who don't necessarily have a lot of money, but it's like we can still get on there. So yeah, you can get it on those places. I'll be posting new content every week if possible. Also doing like Yeti stuff still. So yeah, I'm just creating music and we're just gonna see where it goes.
Yeah. And by the way, we didn't talk a lot about Bad Night for a Hero, but it's a very cool band.
Oh, thank you.
And all their stuff is on Spotify, so you should check that out too.
Yeah. I totally forgot about that. Yeah. There's got to be new stuff with all of this, like Bad Night for a Hero, Yeti, and Prefab Soul. It's just a matter of time. So yeah, find me YouTube, Instagram, SoundCloud, whatever.
Yeah. What's your handle? Just those?
The Yeti, on Instagram. And then each one is kind of respectively like a Bad Night for a Hero, that Bandcamp, etc.
Yeah.
So on.
Shockingly, Yeti was taken.
Actually, is it? I don't know.
I'm sure it is. Some Bigfoot apologist. Is that what they're called? Enthusiast? I don't know.
A Bigfoot apologist. He did nothing wrong.
He didn't do anything wrong. He didn't kill those people. All right. I did all my plugs at the beginning by now, so thanks for listening, guys. And check out CJ's stuff because he's really talented. And I'm sorry I talked so much on this episode. That's just going to be my sign-off. I'm sorry I talked so much on this episode.
Thanks for having me. All right.
See you later, everybody.